We are live. Morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are dialing in from this morning. It's an early one for us, from a number of us here in the ALZ team who are based in the UK, so apologies for the slower start this morning. Let me just get the deck shared, and we can get this show on the road. Let's hopefully that's coming through in a second. All right, cool. So, thanks everybody for joining. As always, we really appreciate everybody joining these calls, and hopefully everybody gets some value out of these. Spend some time with us on the core team and asking questions away outside of other channels that you can use. But yeah, welcome to the June external community call. This is following on from our last one back in May, and we got our next one coming up in September, which we'll share some details about in a few minutes. So, just as a gentle reminder, this is recorded and will be published on YouTube about 24 hours after today, this meeting right now. So if you do not want to be recorded, please do disconnect now. And in case some of you aren't aware or maybe aren't signed up to this, we do have a mailing list that you can sign up to that we don't very often use and abuse. We only use this when we really need to, and we'll send out things like, where's the next external community call? Have we got a survey for you to fill out that we need you to participate in? Do we need you to do something pretty urgently? So it won't be a very chatty DL, but if you sign up to this, you can get notifications from us when we really need you. And as always, at any point, please feel free to use the Q&A feature, the chat feature. There's a number of us here from the core team that will try and answer those questions as we go along. And if we get time at the end, we'll make sure we go and address any questions that haven't been answered. As always, these are action-packed, so we have a good number of topics to talk through today, and we'll get straight into those right now, and we'll hopefully get to the end on time. As a general reminder, we have a number of implementation options and accelerators. These are all listed at aka.ms/alz/AAC, and all of those you can find all of our application landing zone accelerators, all of our platform accelerators, subscription vending, and some other tooling that you may find useful in your landing zone journey. And this is like the one-stop shop. So if you're unsure if something's been checked over or looked at by the ALZ team, this is your place to go. This is your place to find that. And another thing that we've been running now for a good number of months is our roadmap. So you are able to check out what we've been up to, things that we're publishing publicly. This isn't our definitive list. We run our backlog internally in an Azure DevOps board so that we don't share, but all the things that we feel are pertinent and important and actually moving forward that you all need to know about is published on our public roadmap. You can check that out. Click on any of the cards. You should find some info and some updates on there. We try and update them at least monthly. And we try and move things around as well. So if things are getting complete, you'll find them shift over towards the right. But yeah, please do check those out, especially for things like MMA. We were really good at updating the card on here. We also have our What's New page, which has got a plethora of updates this month, and I'm sure Sasha and Ian are going to take us through why that is. But you'll be able to find that at aka.ms/alz/what's new, and we try and list everything that we're working on there. And now with that, some updates from our CAF documentation side. So we built the AVM section for ALZ into the network overview and topology page before. And what we've done, and working with the AVM product group, is decided that it's now time to move that page out to its own individual page in the networking design area so that people can find it more easily And we can also start to expand it because obviously AVM has a number of features that are moving towards GA, and as we get those, we will be adding them into this page on how you should use them and adopt them with an ALZ mindset. So yeah, this is now moved to its own page. So the content has stayed pretty much the same, a few minor tweaks, but you should now be able to find this page a lot more easily if you're interested in looking at AVM in the context of Azure Landing Zone. So a big thank you to Simona for running this one and getting it moved and doing all of the work. Another bit of feedback that we heard, I think actually from the last external community call we ran here, was we wrote some amazing guidance, Brandon wrote some amazing guidance, and ignore the screenshot on the left that seems to have not updated from my updates last night. But we have this guidance around application environments in ALZ, or like how do you handle dev test prod in Azure Landing Zones? And we've now added back this diagram with the no access or the denied circles back on, because people were saying that that was really good and really impactful for helping them with their customers and helping them explain like don't do this. So we've added that diagram back from community requests, so hopefully a lot of you find that useful and can use that with your customers to drive conversations forward faster. This one is a doc update, but is more of a little bit of a technical update as well. So some of you may have seen some guidance or seen some issues around you can't put private DNS resolver in your hub because it causes issues with an express route gateway. And I just wanted to call out that we've heard that, we've investigated it, and actually that's not the case. It is supported. You can put it in the same virtual network in the hub with your express route gateways. You just have to ensure that in your DNS forwarding rule set rules that any external public FQDNs can be resolved by the DNS server you're sending them towards. So if you've got a wildcard rule, which most of you should have just as a catch-all to send all other DNS requests to something, then please make sure that that can resolve any public FQDN, because if it can't, it could actually break the management operations on an express route gateway. That is documented in the express route gateway docs, and if you click on the see more here, that will take you towards the private DNS docs and then further on towards the express route docs. But it is supported. We've clarified with both product groups. It's just you need to ensure that public FQDNs can be resolved so that the management plane does not break on your express route gateway. So no need to change our architectures, no need to put our private DNS resolvers in another spoke. No need to overcomplicate it. You can keep them in your hub absolutely fine. And this one's sort of a double announcement. It's sort of an announcement in docs, but also a good progress towards Azure verified modules that we've been working on. So Saif in the team has been doing some amazing work on moving the Bicep subscription vending module from its individual repo and being published in the Bicep public registry under the old modules folder to now converting it to be an AVM pattern module. This actually happened last night, so if any of you were eagle-eyed, about 11 o'clock last night, we finally merged the PR UK time and got this out. So this is now available. It also includes the small bug fix that was there if you were using the new deployment script added feature to register providers. So that has now been resolved. So if you were using the original module, we were on version 1.5.1. It would have become 1.5.2 with a patch release, but that has now become version 0.1.0 in AVM. So you should see that appearing hopefully later today. The CDN is just updating for the IntelliSense plugin for VS Code, but the documentation and all of the module is there. So if you wanted to go and hard code and paste the string in for the public registry, it would work absolutely fine. It is published and it is there and waiting for you to use. And of course, the test framework has been added upon to make this work, and hence why it took quite a while to get this done. The code conversion from the Bicep landing zone vending repository towards AVM was actually fairly simple, and Saif did that fairly quickly. The complexities came with adding support for these resources within our CI framework so that we can ensure that it can be tested and pulled down and we can take contributions, etc. So yeah, all now done, all now live, and yeah, awesome work by Saif again and Alexander from the AVM team. So thank you both. With that, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to hand over to Sasha to talk through probably our busiest month of policy refresh for a long time. So Sasha, over to you, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. Um, I think I've taken control, right? Yeah, it looks like it.
Yep, you have.
Um, yeah, it was just a small update. We added some 20,000 lines of code, so it wasn't trivial, and we did end up skipping Q3 refresh because we were waiting for some really big things to land that we could integrate and launch together in one shot. Mostly to also minimize disruption and rework for our customers, for you guys out in the world using ALZ. So we've also adopted a new approach where we avoiding breaking changes completely. This wasn't the case like a year ago. We would introduce breaking changes. We don't do that anymore. We actually deprecate any initiatives and create new ones. You'll see with the date that the date was created at the end of the name. And this just makes, again, life a lot easier in terms of adopting our landing zone and implementing the changes. One of the really big things that landed is diagnostic settings version 2. Previously, we had our own custom policies and custom initiatives, and we were covering 53 services. Our product groups have actually now gone and released a much better solution that they're managing, so we don't need to do it anymore. Covering currently 140 services, and obviously more are being added as the Azure services are lighting up diagnostic settings. As a result, we've gotten to deprecate all of our custom policies and initiative, which is great because we had a lot of GitHub issues associated with those policies specifically. And it's all much easier to manage. So there's no more having to deal with the actual individual categories in the resources. And when RPs add a new category, we would have to go and update the policies. That's all gone away, right? So we're doing all logs. As the resource provider updates diagnostic settings for their resource, those logs will automatically start flowing. We've defaulted to log analytics because that's our best practice in ALZ. But you also have the option to send your logs to either event hubs or storage accounts. There are initiatives that support that. So if that's a requirement, have a look at that. We've also worked with the Trusted Launch team. We've introduced a new initiative with a couple of policies, and this will basically just give you a report based on the VMs that you're using in your environment and if they are trusted launch capable, right? So better security and just a general better posture. Private DNS zones, we've obviously added a number of built-in policies that were published by various product groups, but we've also created a new generic custom policy that we can use to enable a private DNS zone creation for any resource that supports it, right? So there are a number of resources out there that don't yet have a built-in. That's fine. We can use the generic policy that we have to enable it anyway for those resources. So that's a great benefit. And you'll see some updates from our team coming over the next couple of months in terms of resources we've identified that we want to enable this for. We've also got a brand new enforced backup initiative. This is really driving a lot of things around immutability, multi-user authorization, and soft delete, right? So really securing your backup resources, your recovery vaults and backup vaults from malicious actors and other bad behaviors. Obviously, many other updates. Please do check what's new. And then the really big chunk of work that kept us busy in the past for 3 months is we've added a whole new section in the portal accelerator, and it's coming to Bicep and Terraform over the next week or two, is workload specific compliance. And this is really all about securing Azure services. If you think of services, I'm talking about OpenAI, cognitive services, SQL, Postgres, MySQL, storage, additional networking policies. And these are kind of the controls that are often requested or used by highly regulated industries like financial services, healthcare, public sector. So this is really about locking down ALZ even further. And it is totally optional. We do not deploy these by default because obviously it does have an impact in terms of how you deploy and manage your resources. But do have a look at that. It's great. So we've got 25 new custom initiatives. We had to create 24 new custom policies. We tried to avoid it, but it was unavoidable in this case. And our existing policies like the public endpoint policy, the encrypt transit, right, checking for TLS, SSL, that's properly configured for your services. Those initiatives have been significantly enhanced. And as I mentioned, coming soon to Terraform and Bicep. I think Terraform was done near complete yesterday. I think we still need to do a little bit of testing, and so those should be coming pretty soon. Just a little shout out around Defender for Cloud. We've had a number of breaking changes introduced by our friends in those product groups. We've got workarounds for it. We've actually fixed the issues as much as we can. For Defender for API, just be aware there is no policy currently available to retroactively implement this. That policy is coming in October, November timeframe. But when you do a clean deployment, we do use an ARM template to go and enable it on all the subscriptions that are in scope, right? The big change there was that they changed pricing. So up until I think it was February, it was free. Defender for API was free. They introduced pricing, and that came with subplans, and now you need to provide subplans, right? And we've defaulted to P1, which is the cheapest option. Again, if you're implementing these things, make sure you really understand cost implications, and also making sure that you size it appropriately to your workload. Security context was another one. We've had several open issues around this. Again, our product group friends went and made fundamental changes to the API. They deprecated alert notifications, which was one of the elements that you had to configure. And they've come up with a completely new construct called notification sources. So we actually just squeaked this in late last week, the fix for that. So that should all now be working as well. And also thanks to Jack, we've got a new endpoint protection policy that we now assign at subscription level. Previously, we were doing this at a per VM level, right? So as a VM gets spun up, the policy would go and remediate. This now applies that same logic, but at subscription level, right? And obviously, loads of updates in the wiki. The Excel spreadsheets updated, lots of additional policy-related content. So as you can see, it's been quite busy, and we've actually added quite a lot. So that's me, and we are heading off to Arjen. Arjen.
Thank you, Sasha. Great updates. We're going to spend a few minutes on MMA deprecation updates, so all the things that we do for updating our environments to AMA, as well as I will take us through some AMBA updates. So I should have control by now, so let's move forward. I think the biggest single update that we've had over the past few months in our MMA deprecation story is that we now have the user-assigned managed identity that we use for AMA now in a central location, right? So we have a single centralized managed identity that we use for the AMA agent. Now, what we see before in the past few months is that we had a identity per subscription, right? So we had a resource group identity per subscription, and of course, if you scale out to thousands of subscriptions, you have thousands of identities doing the same thing. So we actually went back to engineering, to the product team, and said, how can we change this? How can we make it more scalable for our users? So we actually went to the single centralized managed identity. So it did require some changes, right? Because all the policies, built-in policies, were written to support the other model. So we worked very closely with the engineering teams to update all of the built-in policies to actually allow for you to deploy that single centralized managed identity. We've also defaulted to that configuration. So any new deployments will now use only a single centralized managed identity. If you have a deployment from before, we will update some guidance there to help you update if you wish. but you could still use the managed identity per subscription as well, if that's what you prefer. So those updates to those built-in policies were done to the initiatives for VM Insights, change tracking, and also the Defender for SQL initiative. And additionally, for the Defender for SQL initiative, previously we had a custom initiative there because we had to support some flexibility for bringing your own DCR, for bringing your own user-assigned managed identity, which at that point were not present in that initiative. Now, again, there we worked very closely with that team and we actually implemented those updates there. So now that the built-in initiative supports those flexibility options, we actually transitioned to use that built-in policy. So you'll see on the right-hand side as well that we've deprecated our custom policy and that we're now transitioned to use the built-in policy instead. It does the same thing, it's just that now we use the built-in for that. Now, to all of this, we understand that, of course, that the user-assigned managed identity is a very critical part for the AMA functionality. So we've added an additional policy there, a deny action delete. So basically, for that specific user-assigned managed identity that is being deployed, we have a policy assigned that basically will deny the deletion of that identity. So you won't get in a situation where your AMA stops working, stops sending things to log analytics because the identity is gone, right? So that's now protected through policy. Now, one other deprecation note here is that, again, aligned to the same story, we had a policy that deployed per subscription a user-assigned managed identity, right? The policy is no longer needed because we now have a centralized one. So that one is deprecated as well, and that is not being replaced with a new policy. So all of these changes, they're available in the portal. The portal was already updated the 31st of January. A few weeks ago, we've updated it with a single centralized managed identity. All of these changes are coming this month to both Bicep and Terraform. I think Sasha mentioned it as well. We're very close. Final testing needs to be done, but that will land during June. What as well we're working on right now, and it will have about the same time frame, maybe a bit earlier, the brownfield guidance. So we'll have brownfield guidance. So if you have deployed an Azure Linux in the past that still uses MMA, we will have guidance and scripting around how you can update, both from an MMA perspective, so if you're still running MMA, but also from, hey, I've deployed a previous version, maybe in February, that already used AMA, but I still want to use that single managed identity. So both of those guidance and scripting around that will be available this month as well. So let's switch over a moment and take a look at our AMBA updates. There were a few, and I really have to start with a huge thank you to Bruno. He's been driving AMBA, the ALZ pattern, and he made so many amazing changes, including basically everything that's on this list here, right? Alert processing rules. We always had an alert processing rule implemented that would take your alerts and send them to your preferred notification or action. We've now added a alert processing rule that can help you suppress. So if you have like a maintenance scenario where you need to suppress alerts from coming through for a while for specific services, that can now be done with that alert suppression rule that we have in place. We always allowed bringing your or implementing action groups and alert processing rules by default from AMBA itself. But we found a scenario as well that a lot of you already have implemented a certain action group or alert processing rule in your environment that's already set up, right? So we now integrate with those and you can bring your own action groups while deploying AMBA. So it will allow you to use the existing resources that you already have. A new initiative that was added for hybrid alerts, so any ARC-enabled VMs are now available. Well, we have a separate initiative for that, so you can enable that and enable your hybrid environment as well. Some documentation updates, especially a nice update from our architecture diagram made by Brian. Looks amazing. The link is in here, and maybe we can paste it in the chat as well, to the Visio, so you can take a look and adapt it to your environment if you'd like to do that. Together with Paul, we actually had a great opportunity to talk about our work and scaling service health alerts. There's a YouTube video on that, so if you're interested, there's a preparing for the unexpected Azure incident readiness. Amazing other speakers there as well, so definitely worth checking out. So we talk about things like service health, how you can scale your service health alerts using Emba. One of the things that we've worked on in the past and that we've highlighted has gone GA. So with action groups, you can send notifications to emails, and you could also send notifications to ARM roles. And the ARM roles was always a little bit focused around, I assign owner or contributor to a person, and that person would receive that email. But if you assign that to a group, then the person that were in that group would not receive those emails, and that has now changed, right? So if you have an RBAC configuration where you assign permissions to groups, and you want to use that same RBAC configuration to send notifications, you can now do that, right? So groups are now as well, any person that's in the group with an email address will receive an email notification if you have that set up in the action group. Some things are coming up. There's a portal accelerator coming up for Emba. So aside from the ALZ accelerator that we all know, there's a new accelerator coming up just to deploy Emba. So if you have a brownfield environment where you want to deploy monitoring, you will be able to use that. Tanya is doing some amazing work there. It's nearly finished. I'm not sure when it will land, but it's coming very soon. There's some new things that we're working on. Seeing how we can implement quota alerts, so we get a bit more alerting around quotas that you have in your environment. There's some alignment going on with April. We're looking at April and see what things that we have in that there that we can take into Emba to make sure that we stay aligned. All of these changes that I've been talking about in Emba, they need to come to the ALZ Portal Accelerator well. So there's some development going on there in the background because we need to update some of the parameters and some of the tooling there to make sure that the latest release of Emba is also used in the Portal Accelerator. That's also very soon to be completed. Don't have an exact ETA yet, but expect it in the upcoming weeks as well. Now, I think this item has been on here quite a bit, and we do have an update there if we think about Emba for both Bicep and Terraform. Bicep has now created a wiki. They're actively working on bringing Emba into ALZ Bicep. And the first step that they've taken is create a wiki where they will show you the details and the steps that you can take to already bring it in there. There's no integration just yet, but there's guidance that you could follow to take Emba into your ALZ Bicep environment. There's some other new alerts coming. Azure Site Recovery just announced that they're now integrating with Azure Monitor for their alerts. That's GA. We will take advantage of that and we'll make adjust our policies to also create those alerts and enable that configurations on the recovery services vault. There are new alerts coming for managed HSM, and there's some work going on as well to refactor our monitor disabled tagging that we use. So it wasn't entirely flexible enough, and we're refactoring that to make sure that we bring that flexibility to all of our customers. That was it for Emba updates. Let's move forward. I think we're now all go over to Julian with Azure Advertiser updates.
So yeah, I think actually you got me, so I'm not Julian. I haven't changed name. But Julian is traveling at the moment, so is unlikely to be able to join us. He was going to try. So as he's not here, I'm going to fill in his place. Not obviously as good as a substitute, but good enough, and you'll have to put up with for now. So Julian's been doing some awesome work in the AZ Advertiser tooling. And what I'll do is I'll share my screen and we can have a little look at some of the stuff that he's been up to in AZ Advertiser. So hopefully everybody can see my web browser, and we get into a few of these updates here. So firstly, obviously you can see all of the changes that are going on within ALZ. So you can see on the main AZ Advertiser home screen our trend over time. So you can see we've had quite a few bits and pieces over here. So always good to see that we're making a good number of changes, and this is forever going up, which is great. what you can also see now is the main feature to talk about today for AZ Advertiser is if you now look at a policy in here. So let's go and look at our deny management ports, one that Sasha wrote, which is one of the most complex policies I've ever looked at. What you can now do inside of this policy is when you looked at the policy rule before, some of these can be quite complex to look at and understand, right? Especially this one that Sasha wrote, and I think even Sasha will admit it took us both a few attempts to work out how this really should work. But this now covers pretty much everything you need. But you'll see that I'm getting a little prompt, and this is highlighted, and I've got a speech mark here. If I hover over that speech mark, you'll now see that you get this lovely hover over that talks about what this functions or set of functions in the policy are actually doing. So it's making it human readable, human understandable. And Julian's done this by using GPT-4 and GPT-3. So this is now there for all of the policies inside AZ Advertiser. And it helps you break down what the functions are actually doing. So if you're trying to understand what's actually going on in those policies and those complex rules, you can use AZ Advertiser to go and have a look and get a human readable breakdown of this is what this policy is actually doing, or this part of the policy is actually doing. And you'll see that it happens in anywhere that there's complex functions, and you can see that there. A couple of important notes. This isn't done on the fly, so this doesn't pass any data back into an LLM and come back out. This is done at build time, so this is a static website in case you weren't aware. So when the site is built, it passes all of the complex functions to the OpenAI model. It then spits back all the answers, and we attach them to the content in the site when we build, or when Julian builds the site. So nothing's being sent back and forth. Obviously, it is it's an OpenAI model, so it's not going to be 100% accurate all the time, but it's certainly better than us trying to write documentation for everything. So please do check the information. Don't take it as gospel all the time. It is there to assist, not replace. And yeah, that's basically it. So really, really good add to our policies. You won't see it for some of the more simple pieces, like we're not going to tell you what the parameters function does. You know, it's fairly self-explanatory. It's using that parameter. It will only do it for some of the more complex. And you'll also see a mix of what GPT version is being used. So GPT-4 is being used for some of the more complex ones, and GPT 3.5 is being used for some of the more simple functions like Concats and stuff like that. So yeah, evolving space. Julian's working on it quite a lot. But if you've got any feedback, please do give Julian that feedback via one of his repositories. But yeah, really awesome to see. And another thing just to check here is if you go into the changes section and if you filter by ALZ, this is another good way to see of all the changes that have happened in ALZ recently. So you can see here, and you can filter out things that are deprecated and bits and pieces like that. So you can look for the ones that we've newly added, or look for the ones that we've changed. So the tooling is really great to help you work out what's going on there. So like this one, we recently updated due to a bug in the Defender APIs, and then you can obviously still use the comparison features in AZ GovViz to see what actually changed. So you can see it went from 1.1.10 to 2.0, and you can see what actually changed in here, line by line comparison. So yeah, really, really cool features. Please go and use them, especially important at a time like this when we've done a policy refresh. So amazing work, Julian. And yeah, you'll continue to see innovations in that space, I'm sure, for a number of years to come. All right, so let me reshare the deck, and then I think we are handing over to Paul.
Thank you, Jack. I'll wait for you to get to the slide 25, 24.
It's got to get it there.
All right, I'll just take control off you there.
Perfect.
Move it along. All right, just checking we can see multi-region updates as a slide. Just give me a thumbs up. Yeah, perfect. All right, thank you. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everybody. I'm just going to give you a quick update on multi-region updates. So in the last call, I talked about this and introduced this to you. So just kind of recap, one of the main drivers and focuses in our organization is to drive resiliency throughout your Azure infrastructure, and Azure Landing Zone is no exception to that. So we've got a couple of focus areas that I want to talk about: multi-region and zone redundancy. First, touching on some of the efforts, the great efforts that we're leading. Brandon Stevenson's been working with me and leading on this around the multi-region updates. So we've coupled some documentation updates with a portal accelerator update. But firstly, the CAF document updates, all the documents on the left-hand side. We've had an awesome team of people working alongside myself and Brandon who've been updating the documentation to help strengthen the multi-region conversation and guidance that we have. So more encouraging you and shifting you to, if you're moving to Azure, or you're using Azure and you're needing to kind of think about your kind of resiliency strategy, our documentation helps you in supporting those conversations you have. If you're a partner, having that conversation with the customer, if you're the customer yourself and you're having those internal conversations, we recognize that the documentation is very very much something that you refer to and need that kind of support. So we've made sure that that multi-region statement is within that documentation to give you guidance on, you must do multi-region. Also, not must do multi-region, but we're highly recommending and emphasizing that for you, so that you can have that greater experience as from a resiliency standpoint. The portal update, as I touched on as well, we have done the work here. The portal update is done. We are holding off releasing this. It will come this month, but because of all the awesome work that we've been doing, there is lots of work. You've heard from Sasha, you've heard from Ian, you've heard from Jack. We recognize that we are throwing a ton of updates at you, and we need to be careful with releasing this. So what we've done, we prioritized the H2 policy refresh, which included all those awesome updates. AMA is one of our target areas and focuses as well, which needed to be released. So we held off the portal update, but this will be coming this month. We're waiting for another week or so for the code to bake for that H2 refresh, and just to see if there's anything that's coming back from yourselves who are kind of testing this. And then we'll release, subject to kind of no kind of major bugs that are found as we've kind of let that settle. Bicep and Terraform, obviously we always get asked that as well. That is planned. That's going to be kind of into our new fiscal. So that's calendar. This is Q3 of the calendar year this year, and that'll be something we'll be working on as we move forward. But again, the MMA deprecation to AMA is something that we're prioritizing, and this is kind of very much next in mind here as well. Okay, shifting gears to zone redundancy, but staying with that resiliency theme. Again, on the last call, I talked to you about kind of our plan here. I am owing you a blog. I'm going to couple a blog here that talks about the multi-region and zone redundancy together, rather than releasing two separate blogs because of the resiliency theme. So we talked about phase one in the last, or two phases, but phase one is something we wanted to complete in the in this quarter of the calendar year. So I'm pleased to say that Portal, Bicep, and the Terraform accelerators are zone redundant by default. So if you're a new customer coming to Azure and you're looking to leverage the portal, or those accelerators for Bicep and Terraform, you will have a zone redundant default by experience here. And that's what we're looking to do, is make sure that for any kind of new customers, they don't have to kind of go in and remediate any of their work to make sure it's resilient. Now, phase two here is something that's a little bit more involved, and we're giving you some notice. We did in the March call, and I want to re-emphasize that the Bicep and Terraform modules, not to be confused with the accelerators, the modules themselves will not be updated until towards the end of this calendar year. The reason being is because you need to plan for that. You need to incorporate that change. It will be a breaking change, and it will mean that you will be going from a singular to a kind of zone redundant configuration, and therefore, especially with Terraform, that's going to destroy and redeploy your code and your solution. So therefore, you'll need to kind of test that. So that we need to give you a window to do that, and the plan is that we will release that at the end of the calendar year. One thing to stress, as we do plan to do that, we will obviously have like the next policy refresh and all these other things that will be coupled with those updates that are coming in that release that Matt and Jared and team will trigger. And therefore, if you want these other features, you're really going to need to kind of look at how the zone redundancy switch and changes help you, and how you need to kind of address anything to make sure that satisfies your environment as you're looking to deploy that next major release that will be breaking. Again, I will post a blog on this in due course, just to kind of outline the plans, the timelines, what we've done, and how we move forward with that as well. One thing I forgot to mention on the multi-region, oh no, I did mention it, the multi-region scenario is that the accelerators, I recognize this can be a bit confusing here because we're talking about zone redundancy and multi-region. The multi-region capability in the accelerators won't be available until next quarter as well. So zone redundancy is there now, multi-region isn't, but the focus for us is making sure that zone resiliency and zone redundancy is the priority, then multi-region, and that's how we've approached this. I think I'm handing over now, Jack, back to you, or back to Mike Boswell, who's going to pick up from the sovereignty updates.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. Very, 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 very informative. So good afternoon, good evening, good morning. And let me just start off by giving you a little bit of an update from Microsoft Cloud for Sovereignty. If you have not come across this so far, Microsoft Cloud for Sovereignty builds on the excellent work of the Azure Landing Zone team. It is a variant of the landing zone, and it is our way of moving customers onto public cloud with a number of controls that can help them move. So we have just had a release wave in April 2024, and if I go on to the next page, let me just take control. I should take control. Let me just go through some of those updates that have actually come into the product and where we're heading with it. So we have a team who are working on a number of different policy portfolios. Now, Microsoft Cloud for Sovereignty policy portfolio in the last few months has been updated to really help public sector customers meet some of their several key regulatory frameworks. In particular, we are collaborating very closely with NATO's Communication and Information Agency. We've reviewed and validated the compliance of their cloud deployments with NATO's D32 directive and on information protection, which is in preview. Other policy updates that we've looked at and initiatives are actually the control mappings for the Cloud Security Alliance. They are now available on GitHub. Also, we have what we call the Netherlands Bio Initiative and the Italian National Cybersecurity Agency Custom Policy Initiatives. These initiatives can help users kind of move forward and obviously go through a lot of the diverse regulatory landscape. Equally, we are moving forward in a number of different kind of areas. If you look at where we are with our kind of guardrails, we continue to really add additional services are becoming available across the Azure portfolio, including the government security program. We're looking at managed Azure Key Vault, managed Azure Dome, also confidential computing, where is it appropriate to that, and the risk management around the workloads that are landing into that. There are a number of tools, bits that we are bringing into this. So we've got our guidance, which we want to make it easier so that we can we can help government customers and public sector industries really move into public cloud. So this is very targeted at the moment on Azure. We are looking at how do you do those workload migrations. Equally, we've got a LLM reference architecture that has come through, and we've just got the introduction, our first guidance around looking at M365 and D365 configurations as well. So when we look to that, there's some important things also that can be used across every Azure landing zones and also sovereign landing zones. We've moved into doing some public preview tools, which allow us the ability to really go through and do lifecycle tools. So it's the introduction of new capabilities to offer kind of support for pre-deployment evaluations, to streamline policy management processes. The features are available on GitHub. They're kind of designed to empower users with greater visibility, control, and compliance across Azure environments. And our goal is really just to really move forward with them and provide those tools for assessing and helping with the drift. So they enter public previews at the moment. We are also looking at something called a policy compiler tool, which is a way of kind of streamlining the policy management process. And I'm very well aware that I don't have too much time, so I'm going to just wrap this up by saying that we continue to develop. We will have another release later on this year. Areas where we're starting to really invest are looking at how we can surface information around the Azure landing zones, the sovereign landing zones, how we can surface guidance for effective guardrails around different reference architectures, and we will continue to invest in this, and we will at some point have a Microsoft Cloud for Sovereignty's Azure portal, which is currently in private preview, and we'll talk more about that perhaps in another external call. But by all means, there is a link down there in this deck, which we will share the link out. Go and have a look if you've got any public sector or government customers, or even regulated industry customers who are looking and saying, hold on, we need to still go into our own cloud. There might be something that you can open up by actually taking this particular scenario and also variant to them to move them forward. But with that, I will hand back to the team.
Thanks, Mike. It's me. Let me just take control. Marvelous. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about ALZ Terraform, what we're doing in the next version. So the update to follow on from last time is we've had a slight change of focus in that in our work with Mike's team, who are one of our kind of key customers for the vNext version of Terraform, we have decided to allow you to store your architecture definitions as code. And what we mean by that is we've extended the library. So as well as your policy assets and your archetype configuration. So your archetype being the set of policy that you can apply to a management group. We've then got this concept of an architecture definition, which is essentially, this is what I want my management groups to look like, and these are the archetypes that I want associated with those. And the reason that we want to do it in code in a kind of separate file is because then we can have a library of these architectures that you can choose from. So as well as creating your own, we can host some for you. So you can just say, I want ALZ, and you'll get ALZ. You can say, I want sovereign landing zones, and you'll get sovereign landing zones. So it gives a lot more flexibility in terms of the catalog of stuff that we are able to offer. So we've got this concept of a library. The library will host it, it'll be on GitHub, and it will contain assets like policies, things like that. Now, by default, the ALZ provider will be able to talk to this library and download all this stuff for you. So at the moment, it's baked into the module. So every time that we want to update the policies, we have to create another version of the module, which means that you can't separate out updating the module code, so features in the module, from the policies and stuff that you use, so the data that the module consumes. So by separating this out into a separate library, we can actually tell the provider to, go and get XYZ version of the ALZ library. You can then update the data and update the module and the provider and the module separately. So we have these assets which are composed into archetypes. So you might have one for root, you might have one for landing zones, you might have one for corp and online. And then we have this concept of called an architecture, which, again, if you think about your management group hierarchy, you define a management group, you define what archetypes you might want, you define its children, things like that. So you can build up this hierarchy in either JSON or YAML. And then we have this concept of a code generator. So for Terraform, that's the provider. And that's going to be the thing that generates the data that deploys your management group hierarchy. We do plan to add Bicep support for this library in the future, but that's not something that we have in the near term, I would say. So before you defined your management group architecture in HCL, so you had to do it as with module calls. So that's kind of the old-fashioned way of doing it. The new one is defining your architecture as a file. You can create your own, or you can use one of ours. Here's an example file that we're thinking about using, example schema. So you can see that at the top we've got a name. So the architecture has to have a name. It might be called ALZ. Then we have the management groups, and they are called. The management groups have a name. You can also tell the provider whether it's pre-existing or not, so it knows whether it's got to create the management group or just use an existing one. And then you can actually assign multiple archetypes to a management group now. So you can pick and choose. So you can say, I want this is going to be my FSI management group. So you can say, I want this FSI archetype, which is again part of our library. You also define the children and then so on. So in this way, you can easily deploy reference architectures with all you need to know is the name of the archetype, in this case ALZ, and the library will do the rest. If you wanted to create your own, you can just copy that file, change the names of the management groups, do whatever you need to do, and then give it your own name, and then it'll just deploy it from there. Okay, so that's the way we're going. We still hope to have this out probably into July now. My current focus is on the AMA work with Iron at the moment, but we are hoping to get this out in a workable form at the end of July. So yeah, watch the space. And yeah, that's it for me. Happy to answer questions in the chat, and I'm going to hand over.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, really exciting stuff, and a couple of questions about this in the chat. So might be worth you just scrolling back and having a little look. Timo, we're running up against time, so we're going to carry on, and we will take questions at the end. No worries at all. So finally, some Bicep updates. So I'm presenting this on behalf of Zach Trasinski, who now leads the ALZ Bicep initiative, who's taken the reins over from me for the last few months. Obviously, he is based in the US, though, however, so he is not up and available right now, so I'm covering this on his behalf. So we've made a number of releases in the last couple of months, and we've released things like availability zone support when you use the accelerator, some policy exemption logic, which was a requirement for, again, from Mike's team around sovereign landing zones. We've added that. We've fixed a couple of bugs, and we've added some documentation that Ian has touched on previously around how to integrate Amber and bits and pieces like that. And we've also documented like a known issues area, because there have been a couple of known issues that have popped up, mainly around Azure DevOps hosted runners and PowerShell versions on runners that you need to be aware of sometimes. What are we up to right now, and what are we working on? So we are busy getting the policy refresh work that Sasha and the rest of the team were busy getting out in the last couple of weeks, integrated into ALZ Bicep. I spoke to Zach last night, and we plan to have that hopefully done and ready and tested for sort of Monday, Tuesday next week. So that's on progress to hit the end of the month, which is our goal. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Obviously, that will also come with the updates to accommodate MMA deprecation and all the work that Iron has done with AMA. So that'll be there. We're also looking at in adding to the documentation that we've got around Amber alerts in the wiki to make that part more built in and an easier way to actually adopt those and take those policies as part of the accelerators. We want Jared is doing some amazing work for us. Any of you who have used the ALZ Terraform accelerator will know that it not only sets up your module and does a load of passing in of parameters and setting variables, but it also sets up GitHub or ADO and runners and state file storage, obviously not relevant to Bicep, but relevant to Terraform. Whereas our Bicep accelerator works in an existing repo, and then you have to go and set up the rest of the GitHub repo or the ADO repo and service connections and all of those pieces. So Jared is porting all of that work, because it's written in the same PowerShell module, to be applicable to the Bicep accelerator as well. And we're hoping to see that sort of by the end of the month, I think is the latest timeline. So look out for that, where you'll be able to get your GitHub and ADO and the runners all set up from the same accelerator for either Bicep or Terraform. So some amazing work that's going on there. We're making the policy updates easier and easier as we go. We're trying to make it as easy as possible for people to consume and update and add custom policies. However, it is quite a complex topic, so it's never going to be super simple, but we're trying to make it easier and easier and improve guidance there. And the big one, I think, which a lot of people have been asking us about recently, is migrating ALZ Bicep to be built upon AVM, and therefore I have great pleasure in announcing that we've put some thought into this. There's a lot of words on this slide. Don't worry, there is a link to a GitHub issue, which I'll share in a second, which folks, I would highly recommend you go and check out. There's actually a QR code on the next screen, but I will share the link in the chat in a sec. But we are thinking about doing this, right? And what that effectively means is that all of the ALZ Bicep modules will be deprecated, and we'll build ALZ Bicep again, but out of AVM modules, whether they exist today, which a good majority of them do, or whether we need to build and create some new ones, or maybe add some features to existing AVM modules. So that is currently our plan. The ALZ Bicep repo will become more of the home of the accelerator, and very much like that ALZ Terraform accelerator, where there's multiple examples of like how to do hub and spoke, how to do just the core, how to do a virtual WAN deployment. They will all be in the ALZ Bicep repo and used by the accelerator, so that when you go at the time of accelerator, you choose which journey you want to go on and fill in the required inputs, and off it goes and pulls the code from the ALZ Bicep repo sort of templates, and all of those will be using and calling AVM modules under the hood. We will obviously provide guidance and potentially tooling to help people do a smooth migration. Obviously, Bicep migrations are a little bit easier than Terraform because there's no state file involved. However, the caveat is that what if doesn't really work yet in Bicep for modules and for deployment stacks. So it'll be a bit of it could be fun, but hopefully those areas are being improved on by the product group. We know they're working on fixing what if, so hopefully the timelines line up and we can get the best of both worlds and have the migration journey be even easier there. Why are we doing this? Well, we're effectively, now that AVM has been created and exists, we want to take advantage of all that great work and give all of the flexibility that exists in a lot of the AVM modules to our customers using ALZ Bicep. We've noticed that a lot recently that all of our updates in ALZ Bicep have been adding a new parameter, updating a new API version, like very small things and not really to do with ALZ, but more to do with the usage of each of those resources. So we figured, why not invest in the existing efforts that are going on with AVM that we're working on, and have one place for everybody to go and get their modules from, which then helps you build your own custom architectures should you need to, and not be locked into the limitations of the ALZ Bicep modules that they have today. So we want to invest in AVM and basically get everybody to get the value out of AVM, but we're just going to show you a way to deploy that as a reference architecture with ALZ Bicep, which is great. We're also going to break up some of the more monolithic modules. So the hub networking module, not my favorite module, but it works, is really quite complex, and we want to break that up into its atomic components so that people can customize to their heart's content, and design the way that they want to use it. So at a very high level, it looks like this. Now I appreciate it's small, but this is the current plan, and what we're showing you, what modules we would migrate to. But effectively, depending on the journey you choose, you would get everything in the left-hand side box. For governance modules, you'd get all the logging and monitoring modules, and then you would get your choice of networking modules. And we've listed there what modules will be used, and what ones need to be created, what ones need to be tweaked, so you can sort of get an idea of how this is going. So we have got this feedback link out. I will find that link very quickly and pop it in the chat. So if you do have any feedback, or you've maybe done some of this work already, right, and like you've put a lot of thought and effort into this already, if you're a partner or something like that, I know some of you out there have been speaking to me that you have. Please do come and give us your feedback on something we maybe have missed, something you maybe want to see. And yeah, we're willing to take feedback before we make any big decisions on this. So please do come and leave your feedback on that GitHub issue. That is the way to get in touch with us about this. And then before we make any decisions, we will obviously present it back and make sure that we've got everybody sort of okay and we've addressed all the feedback before we progress. So yeah, great work here. Come and see it and come and give us your feedback. All right, we are right up against time, so I'm going to just skip forward for the last couple of slides. So thanks again for joining today and spending the hour with us. It's great to see the engagement and the chats and all the things. GitHub issues is absolutely the way to get hold of us as a first port of call. So if you're not raising GitHub issues, please do raise GitHub issues. That is the way to get in touch with us. We will respond within 2 to 3 days at worst. So please do create them there. The next community call will be on the 25th of September. We're going to go back to a US friendly time slot, so it'll be 4 to 5 p.m. UK time. And the issue is already there with the sign up link. We'll change all the short links shortly. Please do go and register. And obviously, if you're not able to attend because you're from an APAC or a mere time zone that won't allow you to attend in a reasonable hour, it will be recorded as always, like this one is, and posted on YouTube afterwards, so you'll be able to catch up with it then. So bang on time today. No time for questions, I'm afraid, but please do raise them on GitHub issues, and we can continue the conversations there, or use discussions on any of the repos. That's quite a nice way of handling the chat. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you all in September, if not speaking to any of you before. So thank you once again to all of our speakers, and thank you to you for joining and being with us this morning or this evening, wherever you are.